in the Yehuda Amichai festival, just slipped in. Nothing quite as grand as what's been happening in London and Cambridge and will happen in Oxford, but everybody is here and we're very grateful and honoured. And we're going to start the proceedings with Yehuda's widow Hana and son David, and they're going to read from his work in both English and Hebrew. Please give them your applause.
The place where we are right. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world, like a mole, like a plow, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood.
המקום שבו אנו צודקים. מן המקום שבו אנו צודקים, לא יצמחו לעולם פרחים באביב. המקום שבו אנו צודקים הוא רמוס וקשה כמו חצר. אבל ספקות ואהבות עושים את העולם לתחוח, כמו חפרפרת, כמו חריש. ולחישה תשמע במקום שבו היה הבית אשר נחרב. אתה צריך לקרוא עכשיו. אני צפון לדעת שאין דיבור, אחר כך אתה
This poem is called Poem Without an End. Inside the brand new museum, there's an old synagogue. Inside the synagogue is me. Inside me, my heart. Inside my heart, a museum. Inside the museum, a synagogue. Inside of me. Inside me, my heart. Inside my heart, a museum.
בתוך מוזיאון חדיש, בית כנסת ישן. בתוך בית הכנסת אני. בתוכי ליבי. בתוך ליבי מוזיאון. בתוך המוזיאון בית כנסת. בתוכו אני. בתוכי ליבי. בתוך ליבי מוזיאון.
Yeah, and so now we're welcoming, just heard some poems by, one of Israel's foremost poets of the 20th century, and now we have one of the foremost poets of the late 20th and 21st century, Erez Bitton. Erez is going to recite his poems in Hebrew, and Itzhak is going to read them in English.
Good evening. I'm very happy to be here with you, especially to know a little about your very, very, very beautiful village, and to know something more about the great British literature. Of course, we know something about Shakespeare, about other great poets and writers, but it's, I think, the second time I'm here in England, and I moved, but of what we know here, what's going in culture and so on. I thank very much Yvonne Green. It's honor for me to be to participate Yehuda Amichai Festival, and I'm going to read one of his poems, and after I'll read a few poems of me, and Mr. Yitzhak will read in English my poems in English, you know, I'm going to read in Hebrew the language of the Bible. And the poem of Yehuda Amichai is Ibn Gabirol. פעמים שירה, פעמים מוגלה, תמיד משהו נפרש, תמיד כאב. אבי היה עץ בחורשת אבות מכוסה תחר ירוק. אוי, על מנות הבשר יתומי הדם, אני צריך לברוח. עיניים חדות כפותחנים פתחו סודות כבדים, אבל פצע, דרך הפצע בחזי, מציץ אלוהים בתבל. אני הדלת בדירתו.
Ibn Gabriel, sometimes puss, sometimes a poem. Something always bursts out, and always pain. My father was a tree in a forest of fathers, covered in green cotton wool. O widows of the flesh, orphans of the blood, I must escape. Eyes sharp as tin openers, opened heavy secrets, but through the wound on my chest, God peers into the world. I am the door to his apartment.
Now, it's hard, please, if you can read my poem about the horse. Okay?
To say that desert?
No, about the horse. Second.
Blindfolded horses. In every blind man, a galloping horse is lodged, aspiring to tear along distances.
I'm going to read a poem which I wrote especially for Yehuda Amichai.
First, Erez,
To-
can you read horses in Hebrew?
אוקיי. בכל איש עיוור נטוע סוס דוהר, המבקש לשעות למרחקים, כי בכל איש עיוור נטוע סוס דוהר, המבקש לשעות למרחקים. I write about my blindness, I write about love, about my family, about my existence here in the world, everywhere. To say desert. יהודה עמיחי להגיד מדבר. ידך השותקת סרטטה לפניי נאות מדבר ירוק על ירוק ודרך עיניך כמו בכלים שלובים העברת אליי את גדולת הדיבר, את פלא הסנה הבוער. And now I want to read
Erez, let read the translation of
Okay,
that to
please.
say this.
Okay, please. להגיד מדבר, to say desert.
The explanation as well?
Yes.
After a joint reading in Arad, a town bordering the Negev and Judean deserts, as Amichai and Bitton travelled to Jerusalem, Bitton asked Amichai to describe for him the essence of the desert as seen along the road, because he was blind. In response, Amichai held Bitton's hand for a few moments, saying nothing. Then Bitton said, "Now I understand. To say desert. Your silent hand drew for me a desert oasis, green upon green. As with connected vessels, a hand touching a hand, through your eyes the greatness of the word was transmitted to me as well as the wonder of the burning bush."
Now I am going to thank by a poem to those dogs who help blind people everywhere. הכלב ואדוניו, כי בקצב אדוניו יצעד הכלב הנאמן על ארבעותיו, ואם יצלע אדוניו גם הוא יגמגם בהליכותיו ירד. מדרגה רגל, מדרגה רגל, מדרגה רגל עד לתחתיותיו ועד למשטח הישר שלו ימעד אדוני. יכבוש תאוותו למרחקים בלי גבול, יעצור בחובו את שמחת המתפרצים אל הצוות. אבל מה יעשה איש עיוור שכלבו נחלה פתאום? יישא אותו בידיו, ירסל אותו בזרועותיו, יתנתק, יתקל בעץ, באבן שפה, מדרכות שבורות יביא אותו אל הרופא הנאמן להשיב לו גמול, חסד תחת חסד, ליווי תחת ליווי, על שהביא לפניו את טעם יערות עד ותנופת המתפרצים אל הציד. מסדר זיהוי. הם יעמדו עליי כמו במסדר זיהוי. הם יבקשו לפייס אותי בעיניים של ילדים, אז אזכר בגיחוכי הכבדים. אותה שעה יבואו להתדפק עליי כאבים עייפים. אותה שעה קו אופק יבהיק בקו חיוך דקיק. אז אפנה את פניי לקיר ולא אכיר. הם יחשבו שאני עושה את עצמי כמו להכעיס. הם תמיד חשבו שאני עושה את עצמי כמו להכעיס. אותה שעה, מה הם ימצאו בי? אוקיי,
The dog and his master. The law dog will adopt his master's pace, step after step on his four legs, and if his master limps, the dog too will falter in his tread, descending a stair foot, so that his master won't stumble and fall all the way to the bottom, to the flat surface. He will curb his ardour for boundless distances, will hold inside him the scent of virgin forest, ancient tales, the scent of the hunt beating within. And what is a blind man to do when the dog is suddenly ailing? He will cradle him in his arms, he will carry him in his hands, as if holding an infant, and will make his way on cracked pavements, tottering, walking into a tree, stumbling against a stone, and bring the dog to a vet, to the rightful rest, grace for grace, care for care. He will recompense the dog for his measured step, for his sense of smell, and for conjuring up for him the taste of virgin forests and the sweeping charge of the hunt. Roll call. They will stand upon me as if a roll call, and I will have to raise my head from the pillow in order to recall. They will try to appease me with the eyes of children, and I will recall my graceless grins. At that time, the fine words in my mouth will come knocking in my body, and I will nestle against my weary aches. At that time, the line of the horizon will shimmer, an airy smile of a cloud, and I will turn my face to the wall, and will not recall. They will think that I make believe to spite. They've always believed that I do it to spite. At that time, what will they find in me?
And now two poems, short poems, about love, about my wife. She's here with us. יותר ויותר. את נעשית בי יותר ויותר, וגם אני נעשה בך. איפה אני מתחיל, איפה אני נשכח. אני מערה אלייך את תהפוכות חיי. את מערה אליי את יופייך, את חמדת פנייך. את מתווה לפניי את הדרך המדודה בצעד הנכון, בריח הנכון. עוד אערה אלייך שמחות אינסוף, נקים צאצאים של שמחה, של פשר גדול. את ואני. אני לידך, נהיר וברור וגדול ומפוענח. אבל את יודעת שעם כל נגיעה קלה, אני נכון לנפילה הגדולה. לאמי לא חיו לה הילדים. This poem is about my mother who was born in Morocco, in North Africa, and it's telling about all the mothers who lost their children. לאמי לא חיו לה ילדים לאמי. הראשון לא חי לה הראשון שקראו לו דוד על שם אביה, השני לא חי לה השני, שקראו לו מאיר על שם מאיר בעל הנס, ולא היה לו נס לחיות. והשלישי חי לה השלישי, וקראו לו יאיש, שזה חיים, וזה הייתי אני, וחייתי לה. אבל איזה חיים חייתי לך, אמי? אוקיי. More and more.
Okay. More and more. You grow and become in me more and more, and I too become in you. Where do I begin, and where am I forgotten? I pour unto you the upheavals of my life. You pour unto me your beauty, the delight of your face. You clear before me all hindrance, faithful to the correct pace, the measured step. We're both joined in pain. You and I are made of two mysteries, one joy and two wounds. I will yet pour unto you infinite bliss. We'll engender offspring of beauty, of great manifestation.
And now to...
No.
You and I.
Okay.
At your side I am, clear and lucid, neat and coherent, serene rather than ruffled. Still, I remain gnarled and occluded, perched on a brink. For as you know, with every casual contact, I am primed for the great stumble. My mother, her children wouldn't live. My mother, her children wouldn't live for her. My mother, the first, he wouldn't live for her. He was named David after her father. The second, he wouldn't live for her. He was named Meir after Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes, but he didn't possess the miracle of living. The third did live for her. He was named Yaish, which means life, and it was me, and I lived for her. But some life have I lived for you, mother.
And now the two last poems. meeting, פגישה, פרידה. יד ביד, 30 מעלות צלזיוס לכל היותר, ואפילו לחץ הדם לא עולה במיוחד. כמו לא הוחלט עלינו בספר הפגישות הכבד, גם לא פורט מה נמצא זה בזו מקריים כמו שתי מטבעות קטנות בכיס. ידידים יגידו עלינו שעשינו מטוסים קטנים לעוף ברוח, סירות נייר להשיט במים הרבים. צולים יסגירו את הנחתנו בחדר הסגור של הלילה. כך או כך, הכל הלך והמחר בינינו דלת ועיר וארץ, כמו ציפורים שהוא נצא לחפש במקומות החמים. מכל זה יוותר רק זכר הדאור נשבר בפרופיל, רק החוץ המאפיל, רק הדוחק הזה שבאוויר, יד ביד. 30 מעלות צלזיוס לכל היותר, ואפילו לחץ הדם לא עולה במיוחד. שלום, שלום לך, היה נעים מאוד, ואפילו מיוחד. And the last poem about Jerusalem. Sorry?
No, read meeting.
No.
Read meeting. Okay.
Meeting.
We come in.
Meeting. Okay, please. Meeting.
Meeting. Hand in hand, 30 degrees Celsius at the most, and already your blood pressure rises notably. You peck at the beautiful words, believing for some reason you'll never meet again, nearly forgetting that as soon as tomorrow, on the bus or in the store, and you venture a smile, in any case, wishing to gain time, maybe a joke, maybe a well-made tale. After all, you've come polished and well prepared, and the tones and the fingers and in the right place, and yet This pressure in the chest, and yet the sweat across the face, and later, apart, you recite fluently by heart what you should have said this morning, tallying as with small change, costing yourself dearly.
And the last poem is about Jerusalem. שיר באמצע ירושלים. איש הולך באמצע ירושלים ברחוב, הוא אינו יודע שאלף עיניים מציצות בו. כדאי שילך לאט, שלא יחשבו עליו שהוא מנסה להסיק כמיהותיו. הוא נושא עמו שיר, אבל מה יעשה השיר שהולך איתו? השיר משכך את תאוותו לריצה למרחקים, אבל זאת עליו לדעת שגם אם יעמוד הוא יגיע, מפני שתמיד הוא באמצע ירושלים. Thank you very much.
Poem at the heart of Jerusalem. A man walks down the street. He doesn't know that 1,000 eyes watch him. He'd better walk slowly, let them not think. He is chasing after his dreams. He always has a poem with him, but what use is the poem contained in him? The poem mitigates his desire to devour distances, and he must know that even if he stops walking, he will arrive, for he is always at the heart of Jerusalem.
Thank you very much.
And now our host Yvonne Green is going to read. I think she's going to read one or two by Yehuda Amichai, and I hope some of her own. Her new book, Jam in Jerusalem, has just come out, and she's one of the most interesting new poets working in England today. She's just disappeared.
I want to also read from Neil's book, the one that we sort of met over. But I'm going to start with my by Amichai. First of all, I really want to thank everyone for coming out. In a sense, Neil's right, it's a pop-up reading, but it isn't quite the right way round, actually. We couldn't get venues elsewhere. Neil was going to come out, we were going to invite you all in other places. And we had trouble getting venues for a number of reasons, some of which were political, and we couldn't really understand it. So I said to Neil, can we do it in my kitchen? Because the rest of the house has got people remedying damp. And he said, yeah, we'll do it here. Whatever you want to do, we'll do. And I'm so grateful to him. And he's been the poet I consider myself closest to, actually, over many, many years. And he and Emma have been closer to me than I can ever do justice to, really. I can never really say. And I'm so happy to bring my Israeli friends here to be under the same roof as you and all our guests. So this poem is called On New Year's Day, and it's in a lovely pamphlet which is from an original publication, which in fact Yehuda signed for one of Ted Hughes's children. And, you know, Hughes considered Yehuda his mentor, and Hana was very friendly with Ted and Carol, as was David. In fact, he was saying to me, will we get high tea in Idbury if we come? And I only have one proper teacup, the other one's got no handle, so had it all ready for him with some scones. I didn't want to disappoint him. Of course, he had that at the Hughes' house when he stayed with them in the 60s. Anyway, 70s was it? When was it you went?
84.
80, really? Oh, that made, okay. Of course, you're so young. On New Year's Day, next to a house being built, a man vows not to do any wrong in it, only to love in it. Sins that were green in spring have dried out in summer and now rustle and whisper. So I washed my body and trimmed my fingernails, the last favour which a man does for himself while he is still alive. What is man? During the day, he breaks up into little words what night has turned into a heavy lump. What are we doing to each other? What does a father do to his son? What a son to his father? And nothing stands between him and death but a thin defence, like a battery of excited lawyers, a fence of words. And he who uses people as handles, or who steps on a ladder, will soon find himself embracing a piece of wood and holding a hand cut from its body and wiping his tears with a potsherd. I'd like to choose something of Neil's. There's one I absolutely have always loved, which was the Reavers.
It's the first poem in the book.
Is it the first? There's so many that I love, but I'm going to read you this. Can you just define Reaver for me so I get it right?
This poem's about my mother's family, or ancestors at least. It's called Border Reavers, and the Border Reavers were basically people who lived either side of the border between England and Scotland and lived by stealing each other's cattle.
Border Reavers. I remember them, the Border Reavers, men born with the tang of blood in their throats, women with the salt of tears, a spitting fire and a flea-bitten hound sucking the marrow from a bone. Fierce as the wind, their knives stropped to a wicked edge, they lifted their candles and their cattle and their brides and bedded them both on straw, a nest of rats in the decaying tooth of an old peel tower, their tongues still thick with Old Norse, their eyes surprised not to be at sea. It's Neil's. It's also a very early special pamphlet, that one, special collection, sorry. Right, so both Erez and I come from, originate. He was born in an Arab country, and I was, in a Middle Eastern country, and my mother was born in Egypt, and my grandparents in Bukhara, so both Arabic-speaking cultures. In fact, we were in Bukhara for 2,700 years on my mother's side, so we have a long history which we know. So I thought I'll just read something sort of about the things that we have in common in terms of coming from Eastern cultures. Because the Western Jews are more commonly known about, that there are Ashkenazi Jews, so-called, but Sephardim have come. A million migrated into Israel when the state was founded, but also many went all over the world, as did my parents, my family. So our food. The smell of rice cooking is the smell of my childhood. And a house devoid of cooking smells is no home. Sometimes I visited other houses which smelled like our house, heavy with the steaming of mint or dill and tiny cubes of seared liver, all seeping into rice, which would become green and which was called bash. We felt foreign, shy of our differentness, unable to explain the sweetness of brown rice called osh savo, where prunes and cinnamon and shin meat had baked slowly, melting into the grains of rice which never lost their form. Our eggs, called tumi osh savo, were placed in water with an onion skin and left to coddle overnight, so that their shells looked like dark caramel, their flesh like café au lait. Our salad was chopped A woman appraised her refinement by how fast and how finely she could chop cucumbers, onions, parsley, coriander, and trickiest of all, tomatoes. No collapsed tomatoes. A young girl would be scolded if she tried to get her efforts into the large bowl that she and her mother and the other women, if there were a party, were filling. The knife scraped across the raised chopping board, always away from the body in a sweeping gesture. The combination of ingredients never measured other than by eye. Salt, pepper, and lemon, vinegar or Shabbos wine, added at the last moment so that this lota should not be asalak, mushy. Okay. Let me see. Here's one. I hope you'll forgive me. You know I'm always very bad on the oxygen subject. My main interest in Emma's oxygen is how she's wearing it on any given day, because she's got such an amazing array of techniques. Anyway, so this poem's got oxygen in it by chance. I wrote this poem 10 years ago when I thought my parents were terribly, terribly old. They're now in their 90s, and I realised I had absolutely no idea what terribly old meant. And as you care for them and you're blessed to have parents aging, of course your perspectives change. So this is an out-of-date poem. And it's evidence that a poet, at the minute you've written something, you think differently about the same subject. Guests. Oh yes, now this is about people, the family coming for a wedding, and it refers to Appa, which is older sister, because in our culture, the Bukharian culture, there's only words really for relatives and things, family relations and food and all that, ideas and anything modern. There's just no words for them at all. So Appa is older sister, Khwar is younger sister, and there's also a mention of something which is Ayn Hara, which is evil eye, and then there's something else, which is that when you bury in our religion, Jewish religion, you take a little bit of the soil of Israel and you sort of put it in the ground, wherever the person's buried in the world. If it's an Orthodox burial, we have a little box of soil from Israel, and they put it in the ground. In fact, I always wondered how there was any soil left in Israel. Anyway, it's called Guests. Travel safe, old parents, without the need for oxygen, without sore guts, bad circulation, nightmares, fears of Ayn Hara. Travel safe, Appa, whose ankles have thickened, Khwar, who's as modern as aerobics. Bring your fanciest clothes, trinkets, gifts, brachot, prayers, goodies, stories for the henna, that's the ladies' party, dances to heat the blood. Bring music and laughter for me to pile on the bride and water for me to wash her in. We have no use for the soil on your shoes. Wipe your feet before you leave Israel. That earth will find us at the right time. God spare us all for this day. Okay. This is a poem about, I hope it's explanatory. It's about the mother, being a mother, and the grind, basically, and the loss of identity, which, of course, we're all at a stage now where that's probably a fond memory, but again, it's a poem which refers back. Think of her, where mothers sit with children at school gates in dead-eyed parks, in every chance there is to reclaim status. In the still of before her body changed, on the search for what hasn't happened, or the search for what hasn't happened. Think of her near every abandoned woman who ends her marriage because her husband won't. Think of her when a girl reads a book with a boy hero that every boy likes. Only girls like girl heroes. Think of her whenever you're a Jew. Ask what that means. Ask why you feel hurt from outside, inside. When you study Talmud, think of her. when you're illiterate, deaf, confused, segregated, uncomprehending, when you escape to a line of jumping prose, a column of irreconcilable figures, when you've got to drive children to a birthday party and you turn left instead of right, can't choose a present, face the parents without losing your train of thought. Think of her thinking when you read poems with lengthened, measured, halted, staggered breath from cities, suburbs, families, drawing rooms, breakdowns, battlefields. When you get angry or soothed, think of her finding love between poets who wouldn't cede to the silence of death. Think of her cajoled over sausages to publish translations, visions, imagined transitions from 4 alphabets. Think of her going to sleep, staying asleep, lying prone, hopeless, not fighting back until the grey of her hair and resolve measured against that of others who had, did, would choose life over living death. Think of her when you fight knowledge, endure grief you've made no way for. I think we've done it now. Is that about time, would you say?
No, Jam in Jerusalem.
Jam in Jerusalem.
Yes,
One
please.
from Jam in
Okay,
Jerusalem,
so- sorry.
One of the new ones.
Okay, this is a new book. And I've really, this book, I mean, I've had lovely pictures. This book, the picture on the front of this book is by Nicole Eisman, and it's in the Jewish Museum in New York. And the painter said to my publisher, because they chose it, it's the poem that it's in the book. There's a poem about a Seder night, you know, a Passover meal, and they chose this picture because it had one on. And they asked her what her payment would be, and she said, please, could she have one copy of the book? Isn't that amazing? And this is a picture by Frank Auerbach, and he has just written me a letter saying that he's really proud to be on this book. So I'm really proud to be on this book, I can tell you. Right. So you can have a choice, right? Do you want to know how Jews are feeling right now in this country? Just show of hands. No, nobody wants. Okay. Oh yes, is that a nod? Yes. Okay. There's another. You could have other option is. Do you want to hear about how it feels to look after really old parents? No. You know about that. Okay. You want.
What a choice!
You want. Oh, but I've got another one. I look, for me, that's most of my days is about that. It's my favourite subject. Talking about more important than talking about grandchildren is how you get through that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a hard one. You may not want to talk to me afterwards, but anyway, let's find a hard one. All right. Do you have one which you think will be best? Which one do you like best?
You choose.
Is it?
Well, I like the sound of the one about how Jews are feeling.
Yes. Well, yeah, but which of them? There's a lot of those in here.
The one you offered first.
Okay. It's called Fight Back. Here on your soil we aren't protected. Laws, neighbours, we all embrace, will fail us or succeed, protect or fail to. We're no different to anyone else, but we're a target which knows the form. Our grandparents, parents, their friends knew, had heard, seen, felt, and either told us with silence, myth, or toothless old mouths, or by not knowing things because their parents had been too dead to teach them, their grandparents because feelings were outlawed. As a way to get through, we were trained to point duty, without knowing its name, face, the purpose it had for us. Oh, you'll say, they're not loyal. We look away, move, but understand, want to separate you from the bloodshed of defending us, ourselves, from the shame of not being defended. Memory, not history, flaws, not fault, humanity's deaths in the absence of duty, law turned away from fictions espoused, murderousness appeased whilst its functionaries are made marks. Cut, 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 like a swordsman, always after the banner carriers led the charge. Cut, cut, cut on the hashish pipes around which all the promises snaked, which planned the latest round of deaths. Cut, 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 as everyone defies the latest news intended to strike fear in the enemies of its protagonists. Cut, 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 until the era gets tired. And meanwhile, yes, there are starving, drenched, parched, diseased places which want or take piecemeal aid, intervention which baffles, people who know the chop, a full-scale war, unstoppable sewers of blood. Degree, measure, is everything. But who sues for peace before a war that's decade revived? Who understands leaders whose generations outlive Hitler, Stalin, Mao? Who knows what language to speak while the Tower of Babel's engineers fall daily? Their hod carriers beg not to climb the scaffold. What talks to all lost and extant beliefs that point to the supremacist, watches with open eyes as you lie down, rise up, walk by the way, observe so you can't say you didn't see. Thank you very much. Well, how can I introduce my darling friend Neil? I've been reading his work now for, is it 20 years or 15 years?
Somewhere between the two.
Somewhere between the two, and rereading it. And Ted Hughes said of Amichai's work that it's the work he returned to, which gave him himself. I feel very much that reading Neil's work gives me myself. Actually, I want to borrow those words. For me, Neil's work is actually, in my opinion, unsung. It's not, hasn't been given the recognition it deserves. And every year I tell him to enter that prize I won 15 years ago, because it's the only route I know into this game, which is a stupid one really in that sense. But Neil is my hero, my poetry hero. Neil Phillip, please let's hear it for him.
So pleased that you're all here and to be here myself. First of all, I'm going to read two poems by Yehuda Amichai, because that's really why we're all here. The first one I'm going to read is called Out of Three or Four in a Room, translated by Asya Gutman and Ted Hughes. Out of three or four in a room, one is always standing at the window, forced to see the injustice amongst the thorns, the fires on the hill, and people who left whole are brought home in the evening like small change. Out of three or four in a room, one is always standing at the window, hair dark above his thoughts, behind him the words, and in front of him the words, wandering without luggage, hearts without provision, prophecies without water, and big stones put there and staying, closed like letters with no addresses, and no one to receive them. And my second Amichai poem is called The Last Word, and this one is translated by Hana Block. The last word. Because my head hasn't grown since I stopped growing, and my memories have piled up inside me, I have to assume they're now in my belly and my thighs and legs, a sort of walking archive, an orderly disorder, a sagging warehouse, an overloaded ship. Sometimes I want to lie down on a park bench. That would change my status from lost inside to lost outside. Words have begun to abandon me, as rats abandon a sinking ship. The last word is the captain. Thinking about the friendship, great friendship between Ted Hughes and Yehuda Amichai, and also about that poem I just read you, I was reminded of my own poetic mentor, the Japanese poet Kijima Hajime. And I want to read you one poem he wrote and a poem I wrote in response, and they are both called Since I Was Born. This is Kijima's poem. Since I was born, I have been walking ceaselessly. I mean always beating this drum of an earth with my two legs. How much sound did this drumming make? Since I was born, without cessation, I have been breathing, and this means through my mouth and nose, something of the heavens has been coming and going. How much pure space have I inhaled since I was born? And this is my reply. Since I was born, I have been absorbing light, drinking in the light stream of the sun. How much light has spilled from my eyes. Since I was born, as long as I can remember, I have lived on the light that falls from the sky as sweet and as juicy as dew. How much light will it take to fill this body made from the dust of an ancient star? This next poem is called Metamorphosis. I wrote it for Kijima Hajime after he died. It takes a lot of its imagery from the inscriptions one finds on gold tablets that were buried with Orphic initiates in ancient Greece, which were a kind of guide to them as to what to do and what to say in the underworld after they died. Metamorphosis. Inside the womb, he first grew gills, then wings. His dream was to become everything that ever lived. His thoughts swarmed through the dizzying maze of memory. One became many, many became one. Child of earth and starry heaven, he has flown free from the wheel of grief, straight to the heart of singing light. And I'm going to read you one more poem, and this is another one about what someone's going to do after they die, and it's about a Brazilian outsider artist called Arthur Bispo de Rosario, and some of you, if any of you went to the Textiles and Myth exhibition at Compton Verney probably about 10 years ago now, you will have seen this extraordinary garment he made called the Cape of Presentation, which he intended to wear at the day of the Last Judgment, which he'd made from all kinds of scraps. He'd been incarcerated in a mental hospital for 50 years or more. Most extraordinary artist. And the poem is called If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day. Blue angels shimmer at the edges of my visual field. Soon I hope to have become completely transparent. When the last day comes, I shall stand before the Lord to argue the case of the bruised and defeated, the riffraff and the ratbags. I have sifted through the flotsam and jetsam of an unravelled life and feather-stitched it together as completely as I can. I shall wrap myself in the cape of presentation and stand before the Maker, a world in miniature. On the outside of the mantle are images offered for salvation from the registers of my life on earth. On the inside, the precious names of those I have known in the 78 years of my witness. I shall stand before the Lord, and the Lord shall see right through me.
Can we have another one there? One more.
One more?
One more,
Shall I do an Idbury one?
Yeah.
Hang on. What foot is it in? Okay, this poem is about this village, and although it's a tiny village, it had a strong tradition of English folk dancing called Morris dancing. And so this is about an agricultural worker who was also a Morris dancer. And it's called Idbury Morris. Each footstep in the claggy soil pulls the booted foot half out of his hip socket. The plough is so heavy it could pull you over like a kick from a horse. He does not notice these things, following the furrow with a jaunty snatch of whistled song up and down the slope of the open field. A cuckoo calls, a clear bubble of sound echoing from the ancient woods below. He smiles. He's heard the story many times of the Idbury simpletons who tried to trap the cuckoo, hoping by such means to capture summer too. That marshy field between two streams is still called Cuckoo Pen. The tune he is whistling could be any one of a dozen or so. Trunkles, Morning Star, lumps of plum pudding, Balance the Straw, Cuckoo's Nest, Lady's Pleasure, Idbury Hill. Sometimes in bed he kicks his wife, dreaming that he is dancing, and his nimble feet are free of the pull and tug of earth. Thank you very much. Oh, well, yes, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Hannah and David. Thank you to Erez and Itzhak and Rachel. And thank you especially to Yvonne for welcoming us into her home and her heart.
Can I have pudding?
And there is pudding.
That's pudding.
That one.